Hello all together. So, for our one waiting watcher, hello to you as well. And we are having our 4th karate talk. And you know what? Let's take this banner away because we really like to see Sascha and Klaus. Yeah, and we have a proper lineup tonight here with 4 people. We never had 4 people before, did we?
No, it's the first time.
No,
we didn't. It can only be a proper chaos. Well, I'm very welcome to see. I'm very welcome here, and I'm very glad to see all 3 of you. And we want to talk a bit about the divisions, or rather the non-divisions in traditional martial arts. When I prepared our question list, I thought a bit about it, and I came to the idea that the biggest division right now is probably not between the different styles of traditional martial arts, but rather between the modern combat sports and the traditional arts. But this is not the division we want to look at today. We want to see what happened in the traditional arts, in the original old ancient styles, and especially China and Japan. For a lot of martial artists, the most important bit when they talk about their style seems to be to distinguish their own style from the styles of other people. So everybody seems to be talking constantly about what's different in my style than in your style. Yeah, what makes my style special? We just had a discussion here in our dojo because, well, not a discussion, a conversation, because we had a meme describing the 4 big styles of karate and distinguishing them, which I don't, I wouldn't say in our modern time we have to say Shotokan has the long stances and Wado-ryu is the fast style and Goju-ryu is only for infighting. So these divisions are usually very, very emphasized, and we want to rather look at what's connecting. Good. Our first question, we all have spent quite a bit of time cross-training. None of you has only done one martial art. We all spent a lot of time. And the real question is, why did we feel the need to do that?
Well, one of the first things why we feel this is certainly kind of a biography. You start somewhere and you get into it for a certain time and then you see something else. With me, it was judo. I was 7, 8 years old. And then I had to change the troop I was with because they moved somewhere else. And then I came to a group, they also did jiu-jitsu and Shaolin Kempo. And it looked interesting. And so I took this in too. And later, when I moved to university in Cologne, I got to look into some other things. So I started with some of the Chinese things, but also did some Kendo and Aikido. So it simply developed. And then I had to change the troop I was. Kempo, and it looked interesting, and so I took this in too. And later, when I moved to university in Cologne, I got to look into some other things. So I started with some of the Chinese things, but also did some Kendo and
Yeah. Can I ask you a short question?
Yeah.
The stream seems to be frozen here. Isn't that fantastic?
Klaus seems to be frozen for me.
Klaus, are you frozen?
Yes, from time to time it looks like this. Interestingly enough, only on YouTube. So I'm
when I go. I heard a repetition of what he said as well.
Oh, okay. But we are all on now again, yeah?
Yeah, I'm there.
Technical problems have been with us since we started this karate talk. It was always funny. Good. So now we heard Klaus' story, how he got to other things. I can say for myself that I came to other things always when I felt a shortcoming. So when I noticed, oh, there's a question or there's an issue that the art I'm training right now isn't answering, or at least my teacher can't answer in that very circumstance. So I would go looking for more knowledge beyond what I already learned.
I would say
just as a hint, in the beginning, I said, I need you all to talk a lot.
we don't know when to talk, so it would be a good idea if you direct who is going to talk.
Moderate.
Yeah, moderate.
Oh, that's a new thing. Yeah, maybe that's important with 4 people. Okay.
Well, George and I are too polite to just talk.
Excellent.
Yeah, let's not be polite. Let's stop that.
Let's Sascha come first.
Sascha.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the same for me. Like Heero said, it's I felt the shortcoming almost right in the beginning when I started as a kid, because I wasn't looking for super effective self-defense, but I had this thing in my mind that I wanted to train like the kid in the movie who was like taken by Master Yoda or some master on the top of the mountain, and I was looking for this depth of martial arts. And obviously, you all know that you can't find that in a sports-orientated dojo. So I was too young to go somewhere else, but that was my driving force in the beginning, just to find that depth of martial arts. And that ultimately brings you to Chinese martial arts when you started with Japanese martial arts.
Yeah, George?
Well, actually, I can't take credit for the start of my mixing arts journey, because he was actually my sensei, my karate sensei, that introduced me to Tai Chi. He was a fan of training Chinese martial arts parallel to his Japanese training, and so I started training young style Tai Chi with him. But it stayed with me forever, and I'm still doing that. But one thing I do after that, I never went trying to correct shortcomings or something like that. But when I see some kind of movement, some ability I want, then I go and fetch it and contact it. I mean, for the Missing Link community, I saw you guys on YouTube, and I saw, oh, I like that. I contact them, and that's how I started my relationship with you guys. And that's my Kenjutsu sensei. I found him on YouTube as well, and he lives in Spain, and I take him to Denmark, and I visit him. But the first time I saw him, he was on YouTube. So I like that. I want.
Okay, I will have to get used to the idea of moderating it. I had a little bit like Sascha. When I started martial arts, I was expecting, oh, we get a show. I expected deep secrets and very cool methods, and what I got at first was a lot of brawling. That was fun, but it was not the secret deep knowledge that I expected, Master Yoda or something. Yeah, I started with judo. Then I had a Tai Chi teacher for a little while who was very ambitious, but I'm not sure how skilled he was. So he was always very, very eager. But I had the feeling that the real fighters are in the karate group next door. And when I finally had summoned up enough courage, I went there and said, can I please start with you? Some friends started there as well, so it was an easy entry. But still, what I missed was all the cool secrets and the cool movements that would make it possible to win a fight without brawling, or to not have to fight. So it was a sport, and that was not enough on the long term. Good. Yeah, as Sascha said, if you look into more into internal bits or more into the depth of karate, you end up very quickly in China. Oh, I look in our question list. We have spent quite a while, Sascha and I, Klaus as well, working on this Shoshin project. That was a group of martial arts teachers from different styles. When I got very, very unsatisfied with my karate, I had a long phase where I basically only cross-trained, where I didn't want to train in one style only anymore, and I was just looking for knowledge wherever I could go to. And the Shoshin project was a group of martial arts teachers from very different styles, and we just developed concepts together and made seminars. We had Tai Chi there, we had Karate, we had Wing Chun, we had Ninjutsu, we had some full contact people. That was always quite fun. Some self-defense experts and Qi Gong. And all this mixed quite interesting. I think Klaus found us via the Shoshin project, right?
Yes, it was when you had this Bonsai Kinder training in St. Augustine, where I came as a Qigong teacher for doing this in my normal school, where I teach English and German with the small ones. So this how this started out, and then we stayed together in a way and did more interesting things afterwards.
You come from a Chinese background, Bagua, Tai Chi?
Actually, I started out, as I said, with Judo, and then later I had Wing Chun. And when I came in 2006, I started out with Tai Chi and Qigong. And since 2009, I also do Xingyi Bagua.
And you still visit our seminars. Sascha, on the other hand, has spent 2 years going around the world. Was it 2 years in the end?
Yeah, kind of. I came back to Germany over Christmas, but I guess that doesn't count. But that was actually after my phase of training in Japan and China and India. And I wanted to have this long-term research project. And I decided not to directly go to Asia, but go to Australia and New Zealand, for example, to look into the martial arts traditions there, because we are so close-minded looking to Asia that we often forget that there's everything around in every place, and every tribe around the world had their martial arts. And I found that super fascinating because you see so many similarities. I don't want to drag the conversation away from China now, but it's the same principle. Sometimes they have the same depth. They use kata, they use animals. It's universal all around the globe. Kangaroo style, for example. Not surprisingly.
Reminds me of your Hakka experience in the
in December. Yes,
Love that.
fantastic.
that was really great.
So what is it in the, or is there anything connecting in all martial arts that you met around the globe? Anything that's the same everywhere?
Something rather cheesy comes to my mind when you ask that question, passion. But that's really a cheesy answer. There's a lot of passion behind it. I found the same principles that happen all around the world. I would answer the question, and the principle is this this gap between something that is very traditionalized and something that still works. Is like a Koryu, an old style, and this thing that something gets separated into this like more or less traditional thing, which is sold to tourists and whatever, and sold to big groups. And on the other hand, the old style that is still working for fighting. This you can find all around the world, which we know so well from Japanese and Chinese martial arts. It's like a universal thing happening when you bring out the martial arts into the world, and some people start to kind of make a thing to sell it and to teach to big groups, and others keep the spirit of close combat fighting and survival.
It's quite interesting that at the end of the day, when you come to modern martial arts, it cycles back to the streamlined, reduced fighting styles.
True, yeah, without the mysticism in it.
Funny enough, the mysticism is what at least you and I were searching when we started branching out from our sports martial arts.
Yeah.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? On the one hand, the mysticism seems to be important and something that gives depth. On the other hand, it's a risk of getting lost in ritualized forms and
yeah,
showy, superficial movements.
I think it's very much a problem on or a question of why you do martial arts anyway. I mean, if you do it to do self-defense, and you see you're looking for something that you can learn very quickly, that seems very effective on the street or wherever you need it. When you do it for military training, then you do it also to do it very quickly in an organized form, in very clear settings where you need it. When you do martial arts because you like doing things like this, like I think all four of us actually do, then you go into the deep things. You go into things like meditation. You go into things like slow training, complex training, working about the language, about the meaning of the words that are used to teach. In Tai Chi and in Qi Gong, you have the teaching started out as a kind of song or poem, because very many people in China who learned martial arts couldn't write or read. So they learned a song, because a song is something you can really very good keep in your head, and then you repeat it and repeat it again, so you don't have to write it down. And then when you want to teach it, you simply sing the people the song again. So these are all things that you go into when you want to do martial arts, because simply you love what it means to do it in itself, and what it teaches you about being yourself and about the people you meet when you do it.
I agree with you very much, because actually I think maybe after my first year of training, back in the 80s, I was done with self-defense. A lot of other things caught my attention within the martial arts way. Actually, I was a white belt. I think I had 3 months training when I got into a fight where 4 guys attacked one of my friends, and I had been standing in Sanchin, kicking Kingleri and punching Oitsuki for 3 months. And when this happened, I went boom boom, the guy went down. Next guy, boom boom, the guy went down. I said to myself, it works. So that there ended my self-defense training. But I think Klaus is saying that is so great for me, because I didn't know this about Chinese systems where people learn through singing, but I do that to myself. I make a song in my head with the transitions and the techniques, so I can sing it in my head. So to get the sequence properly, I didn't know that. And thirdly, I want to say I met Klaus a couple of months ago in Germany.
Yes, in December we did.
And you were the Chinese guy amongst a lot of Japanese guys, and you were the one I had the most complete communication with, because I know your training is not the same as mine, but somehow it is, because we knew exactly what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have that with my karate friends. When I say open your qua, and they want what? And Klaus knows exactly what I'm talking about. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there we are at this inner principles that are not so well taught in Japanese styles, especially sports karate, that you talk about this small body alignment stuff, and it's not mystical things, it's just body mechanics, but it's on a very subtle level. And I think we definitely need that. And yeah, that's so nice. If you talk with Tai Chi people, they understand this stuff.
Yeah. Actually, I
So
think
we also,
that's the great thing about studying several systems, that some no system is perfect, and I think especially at the practice level, but also on a conceptual level, the Chinese are a little bit deeper, and I think that the Japanese are a little bit better on the pedagogical side, how to learn. Now I made enemies in both camps.
Yeah. Apologies. There is something to be said about the Japanese martial arts being scrutinized a bit more than the Chinese. Also in the West, especially karate, there were a lot of people looking into it. Also, people who have ideas of biomechanics and sport medicine and stuff like this. And there are a lot of Chinese, not only Chinese styles, a lot of smaller styles that have been passed on in a lineage from master to student, and that are at times very authentic, but they're also horribly unhealthy at times. I have seen horrible stuff that was taught to me as, yeah, well, that's authentic. This is how we always did it. That you're like, okay, I do like to use my knees in 5 years' time from now as well. So the issue, or the great chance I have met in many Chinese surroundings, is that knowledge is really authentic and old. And that there is really experience being passed on.
Your same description it can be applied to the wushu people. Sometimes I say, I see that and say, oh my God, these guys they're not going to be they're going to sit in a wheelchair when they're 30.
It's because it's normally something that you either do in competition or in presentations, and this is not necessarily traditional martial arts. It's martial arts, elements from traditional martial arts combined to either look good or to fit into a system on how to make points in a competition. And the way I have seen traditional training normally also takes in very many aspects of Chinese medicine, about this meridian things, about yin and yang balance and things like this. Massage is very important, acupressure. Tai Chi is also not only for fighting. Most people in Europe know it as a medical movement, and the people who actually use Tai Chi for fighting or train Tai Chi like something to fight with is, I think, very, very small. It's also very small in China itself. It's a little bit, I always say, if you want a percentage of the people in China who do Tai Chi like to fight with, it's like the number of people in Germany who dance Schuhplattler. I mean, we have 3 German people sitting here, and I don't think anybody of us ever went to a Schuhplattler course.
Actually, let's not talk about it.
Maybe we should.
It's very Bavarian. Let me underline this. Okay. Yeah, it's true. There's also the element that Chinese martial arts, of course, have also made a lot of changes due to the kind of government they have there. The most supported and most sponsored martial arts are those that create a lot of show and a lot of image and prestige. Sascha will know more about that.
Yeah, I
can give you a bit. I was always fascinated that Sascha went to Wudang quite often to train with Europeans or at times Germans in a Wudang temple. You were there as well, weren't you?
Of course.
I was there too, 2 times.
Of course. Yeah, and you will know it's kind of deteriorating over the years. It's becoming more and more popularized in China and overseas, and the schools are growing. I saw it with one of my masters. He had quite a small temple school, which was pretty nice, and now this grew into a massive 1,000 student school. which of course changes everything in the school. You only teach forms and not the knowledge, and like Klaus said, the meridian knowledge, the energetic stuff, the application. There's no time for it, and also the teachers are not knowledgeable anymore, because there's only one head teacher who was actually in the monastery, and the others are just people who study for 3 years very intensively. So, and I heard, I haven't been to Shaolin myself, I heard it's much worse in Shaolin. So this thing is happening in China, of course, as well. I would say it's the same in Wudang and Shaolin. The people who actually really train the old style, it's very hard to find. Very hard to find. And the people who still know the application, and the forms also look different. You have these very flashy forms with a lot of jumps and stuff, which look good on national television in China. And then you have the old forms, which look kind of crappy, like the ones from Okinawa we all know. And back when I was in my only Shotokan years, when we saw these forms on a video, we saw, what is this old man doing there? That looks horrible. Mm-hmm. And nowadays we all know this has a different quality to it, maybe a deeper quality.
I think there is also a lot of commonalities. For maybe 15 years ago or something like that, I saw this exhibition from the British Hungar people. And I thought the katas didn't look Japanese. The technique did. It looked like karate. Just some kata I never seen before. But their technique looked very, very heavy. You know, when you see Shotokan, this heavy Shotokan-like thing, they look like that as well. So I think it looks to me like, regardless of country and culture, things go in a circle, and we repeat the same mistakes and the same virtues all over and again, over and over and over. Every generation does the same dance, it looks like to me.
I think historically that's pretty accurate.
So I like to believe that you guys and myself are trying to rediscover, or trying not to lose some of the good things with the old styles, but bringing it forward. I mean, every generation has to take responsibility for the knowledge they inherit, and we have to bring it forward. So I try to leave things better than I left them.
It's a bit an attempt of squaring the circle, of course. The holistic approach to martial arts, having the whole side of the form, the internal bits, the philosophical content, the health content, and the fighting, can be quite overwhelming. And I find it very difficult to pack it all up in a package that students really can accept. And now, I mean, students who are not coming to the dojo and spend 24/7 there for years on end, like what I hear from your master in Wudang, he basically lived a life only doing martial arts, and the same expectation he had from his students. Being able to create a modern martial arts that's actually fitting in modern life and still has all this content is a big challenge for me. And one of the reasons why I personally look to China and to older teaching methods and older ideas. The modern styles very often are very sportive, very competitive. So one reason to look back is to find the holistic content and then look, what can I use of this in our everyday life? I find this a huge challenge.
Well, it's a dialectic process, because if you only look back, I always ask people, would you like to be to have surgery by a doctor from the 1500s? No, you wouldn't. Okay, so it's a dialectic process where we look back and bring the things that are good from there, but we have to use what you have today, that in some ways are much better than before. I mean, the knowledge about the human body and so forth is deeper today than it was for 500 years ago. But the empirical experiences some of these masters had, I think, was much deeper then than today, because we don't go around killing each other today, not in the same way anyway.
Not in this. Oh wow! Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not doing 9 hours of Tai Chi or Qi Gong every day, so we don't have this, like you said, empirical experience of our body also and ourselves in meditation and whatever. And you might say, okay, what has it to do with fighting? But it is a different level of skill. I mean, maybe UFC fighters have the same in fighting because they do it every day, but it's a completely different depth of self-understanding if you practice in that way. And yeah, we can't do that with our students. And we obviously do it all the time.
You guys always talk about fighting, and I never think about fighting. I will never fight anybody. I will punch them so they can't fight or whatever, but I will never try to fight anybody. I think, and that's why I don't like the term martial arts either, because it's not an art of war. It's an art of peace, of cultivating the body, the mind, the self,
I remember we had that conversation when we edited the Missing Links of Martial Arts, the book.
Yeah.
That you said the word fighting has a competitive aspect for you, and it feels like something you do in a sports rather.
Or consensual violence. It's like you call me something, and I will say, what do you say? Let's step outside. Come on.
I have to consider the word consensual in that context, but yeah, I know what you mean. It has something of an escalation. And in the book, we switched to the word combat for this. To make sure that this is about an escalated conflict, not about a game between two testosterone-laden lads. Yeah? So the word fighting might be confusing in this context. And as I said back then, it might be that it's our German word Kampf that has a different meaning than a fight. Yeah, it is a bit. It might be a bit of a false friend. I think the point that combat, conflict, escalated conflict is part of the martial arts is still very important.
Yes, of course, but I think the mindset is, that's what I don't like karate competition or karate kumite in that way, because the mindset is, I'm strong and I'm gonna fight you and I'm gonna win, and I think self-defense is, I am going to survive, and I don't have to win. Of course, I will do anything to survive, and if that means, if you force me to kill you, I will. But that is not what I want. And I think when you work with, like Klaus said, with the words, you work with the feelings, you work with the energies. You can produce a monster if you don't watch out. And I see in the development of martial arts, I see some, especially now within karate, when we try to reinvent karate as the old masters did, and I see a branch of the bunkai world developing into monsters to defeat a monster. And I don't like that.
Yeah, that has a little a little side effect that I at times find a bit worrying, and probably I make enemies now with that. I do occasionally notice parts of the martial arts world, and especially the competitive martial arts world, leaning to the right of the political spectrum, authoritarian, slightly aggressive, wanting things sorted the hard way. That irritates me at times, and I think this is indeed something. If we speak of peaceful warriors, this idea of that it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war,
exactly.
That would mean that the martial artist doesn't try to develop the killer instinct only, but that we have a look at all the other content in our martial arts as well. I'm not sure if competition is the only culprit there. I think it's rather thriving for efficiency that is an issue. We're living in a time where everything has to have an efficient, measurable, fast use. And if you apply this to something like martial arts, where a lot of the knowledge is internal and has to do with long training, self-discovery, working with a partner rather than against a partner, and that's not measurable. No. You cannot measure it in a grading. You cannot measure it in a competition, at least not very well. So I fear that this need to be efficient and measurable is the bigger.
You have to win. You have to. The ego is so prevalent. You have to win at all times. And the Tai Chi training, my teacher once told me, I believe it's an old saying, invest in loss. And that opens so many doors in my head, but it doesn't give meaning today. If you say to a young student, come on, invest in loss. What do you mean? You want to put my head so you can punch me? What do you mean? But that phrase, invest in loss, changed my mind completely, also technically.
But in the end, when you put this investing in losing or in loss, as you said, when you, for example, I like to do push hands, and we also did kakiwaza, and where we then put push hand things into karate and tested things out in some of our seminars. In the end, actually, you invest in loss to win in this kind of situation, because it's what is this about? You come together, you train together, and when you train together, of course, you first try to learn about body mechanics, about how the energy flows, and then later there comes in playfully or not so playfully, depending on your character, this moment of competition, like, let's see how this works, and let's see how we can manage it when it works. This is always, I mean, we both did a few things in December, Jorge, as you know, where other people who looked at us were really, what are they doing? What the hell is happening?
But we were the crazy old guys, I know.
Yes. And so it has very much to do with why do you train something, and then what kind of person are you? When Heero talked about efficiency, the very funny thing when I think about some of my Wudang masters that I trained with, they have from the age of 7 or from the age of 11 lived in a monastery, and they have trained there, and later then they went outside into other countries to train people there. And in the beginning it was quite difficult for them because they have lived in this monastery surroundings until then mostly, and then they come into a world where people have jobs to earn money, where people have their house, where they have to clean their house, their kitchen, to buy all these things that don't really matter so much in a monastery. Life doesn't normalize, so you get up at this time, you go to work, then you do this, and then after you did all this, or on the weekend, you go to a seminar to this master who actually doesn't know the way you live and where you come from. And for at least one of them, I know very well that in the first 1 or 2 years, that actually was a problem, because he came with this idea of teaching us all of the things that are done, and in 1 week, in a way. And he thought we would train like Chinese pupils would do in a monastery, who have time and who have the energy to do this 8 hours a day because they're younger, because they don't have to work in the same week so and so many hours. They don't have a family to care for at this moment. So these are all aspects that don't come in. So efficiency in martial arts training is for very many people in our world, of course, very, very important, because it's an add-on to what our life is about anyway. We are people before, and some of the people watching perhaps too, who made martial arts a very, very big part of our lives. And so we understand this coming in, and when we look at this efficiency thing, I think, and sometimes say, this is not something we want, because for what we really want to get out of this, it is not enough. It doesn't work. We have to work slow, we have to work long, we have to sit down 1.5 hours or stand 1.5 hours in meditation or something like this, because it belongs to the thing that we want from our training. And I think there's really a problem. What is it you want to get out of it?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think, well, we all four have some kind of craziness, and we don't shy away from challenging situations in the training, and we kind of love that and crave it. So I don't think that efficiency or also the combative edge is the problem in the end. To bring it more into a philosophical area now, it comes down to what is the basic understanding and the motivation you have behind martial arts. And then in the end, what do you really, how do you perceive life? And that is something that I very often see. You all know that from martial arts in Japan, for example, where people kind of follow this samurai way, and they're always talking about enlightenment and Bushido and all that stuff. But if you look closely, they are very, very, tight in their head. They kind of have this perception that around every corner there's danger. Half of the people of this planet are murderers, and you have to protect yourself. And this is something I think that's not the mindset that you have or should develop with martial arts. You should develop this kind of gentle mindset. But that doesn't mean that you go freak out and get crazy if someone attacks you. It has nothing to do with the training in my mind. But and that is something that I, for example, found more in Wudang than in the Japanese traditions. This gentleness, this softness in the philosophy behind it. Of course, you find it in Japan, but there is this historical trace and remnants of this militaristic ideas, and you still have that, especially in Shotokan. There's always this fighting, and I am very interested then always, what is the underlying perception of reality these people have? And of course I have. I always test that. And sometimes I find myself
when you hear
quite a negative reality.
When you hear people say this dreaded sentence, that doesn't work on the street. And I always wonder, which street? Where do they live? Yeah, where do they go in their free time? That things have to work on the street, and you have to be aware at all moments and ready to fight. We are not living in this world. We are not living right now, at least, thank God, and hopefully in the future neither. We are not living in a world where danger lures around the next corner, and we have to always be ready to fight for our life. That's not the main purpose. When people speak about self-defense, there is very often an amount of fear that's irrational. Our life isn't that dangerous, and things we learn in martial arts go far beyond the self-defense aspect. I mean, what George said, that for him, self-defense was finished after 3 months because he had a lovely experience of working self-defense.
He wasn't lovely.
It sounds enjoyable, which for me the experience was the other way around.
Yeah, we have the crazy.
When I started working for the police in Bonn back then, I was surrounded by absolute monsters, and they were superior in every aspect. So everything I had learned seemed to be suddenly devalued, and I had to relearn from the beginning. For a long while, my whole focus went to the self-defense aspect. Whatever I did was measured under this, okay, will it work if I have to fight someone who, I had some people in front of my mind who were, always my imaginary opponent. Oh my God, it will not work against that fellow. Yeah? So that was for a long while my main thing. It had to work. I had to become stronger. I had to be able to defend myself. And the point when I came back to more internal parts was when I got tired of this and noticed that my life is not a constant fight, but I'm looking for something completely different. I'm looking for something that I can do my whole life, that accompanies me and that helps me with the actual issues I have in my life, with the stress, with the hustle, with the underlying aggression, with the bullying on low levels that you experience in a world that is very competitive.
But there is one point I think we have to take into account. To train martial arts is not only to train for conflict. To train martial arts is to be flexible in life, to be courageous and meeting change and finding opportunities in life, new works, new projects, new ideas, adapting to the winds of life, standing tall and flexible, and knowing when to fight and when to retreat. And for me, the dojo is a microcosmos of the world, of my life. And I go to the dojo to learn to live better. I'm not in there for winning over people. I mean, I don't get any kick out of it or out of that. The only kick I get is when I win over myself, when I suddenly develop things I couldn't do before, or I develop strengths I didn't have before. I can master situations I couldn't, or I have difficulties with before. When I become less frightened, when I become more open. That is the dojo for me, because the confrontation side is rather, it's rather closed-minded, and you see blood and hatred, and it's not a world I want to be a part of. It
No.
makes me sick.
No.
Yeah.
Is one of these martial arts that are quite often mostly connected with blood and killing people, although like it's ninjutsu, where people are master killers and things like this. When you read literature, like Stephen Hayes translated it, who married into a ninjutsu family many years ago, and he described the mindset of a ninja like this. So you come into a room and you see if there is a disharmony, no matter what, and you do something to make this disharmony go away. And this mostly, it can be standing in a less offensive way to relax somebody who is already in the room, to say something nice or something like this, so that actually potential dangerous situation becomes something where people start to agree with each other. Another ninja saying is, if you have somebody who really seems to be an enemy, try to get near to him, to learn about him better. Even perhaps try to become his friend. When you become his friend, your trouble is over anyway. And if he doesn't become your friend, you're so near that you can do away with him without much trouble. Which is, of course, what we don't do anymore.
Never. Maybe here I just had a look at the at the comments here. I'm still learning to use this app here. Refers to our conversation about what martial art is for. Søren thinks it's mainly not to lose. Søren. I know where he's from. Not from Denmark, although the name suggested. If Søren is still watching, I expect to see Søren in June in Denmark on the summer seminar.
You're welcome.
Summer camp. There's he has to be there. Yeah, probably a point that if it comes to self-defense, the main target is probably not to win, but actually not to lose, to, as you said, survive. Yeah. Somebody else posted something here. Let's see if this fits on the screen. A master who was asked to teach self-defense to elderly people, and he taught falling correctly. That's realistic self-defense. They were far more likely to die from falling than from a mugger.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. That's for life. Yeah.
There's a point to it, isn't it? One of the things in martial arts that I notice is that people rediscover their body. People are very often very Sascha had this example in his Qi Gong class, that he said there are people so disconnected from their body that when you touch their arm, they can't say if it's the upper arm or the lower arm. They just say, yeah, it's my right arm. They can't distinguish anymore because their sensitivity is so reduced. I had one of my favorite students of all times was a lady who started when she was 66, and she said after a few years, she told me that the biggest benefit of our training is that she's not afraid of the stairs into her basement anymore. Because she looks at them, they're very steep, and she says, if I fall down there, it doesn't matter. I have fallen in training 80 times this week. And that's I think awesome. This is a very important part, that we rediscover not only fighting or conflict or but also our body. And now that I said rediscover fight and conflict, I think a lot of people have no idea about conflict anymore. Weird things are being seen as a conflict these days. You have disagreements between two people who have a different opinion, and they describe it as a conflict, as something that is. Now I'm only coming to the German word streitig. Well, they experience a normal disagreement as an actual combat situation, with all the symptoms, adrenaline rush, stress, anxiety, whatever.
Even online.
Especially online.
Of course, even online. The lack of physical contact online surely reduces the menace. Sorry.
I would say especially online, because when you see all the shitstorms out there, when you read the newspaper and see about what kind of idiocy they write pages and pages for weeks and weeks. I said, okay, this person said or wrote one very, very stupid sentence. So we have all seen it as a stupid sentence, and we have said, okay, I don't really agree with you. That's not right what you said. And then it should stop. But he should lose their job. She should lose her position there. I don't know why. Actually, in many, many cases, it's so absolutely overdrawn and overblown, actually, so that they make, like we say in German, ein Elefanten aus einer Maus.
Isn't that a Mitch? Anyway.
Before we leave the topic regarding health, I think that is just training. Heero knows I have this condition called cluster headaches, and I'm in a cluster right now, so I'm a slave under that sickness right now, and it drains my energy very, very much. And the night before yesterday, I dreamt that I was training Shinto, Gankaku. And I was training without kime. I was training with flow, and I felt my energy flow between yin and yang, open and closing. And so when I wake up, I took to the dojo, and I did just that. and I didn't have any headaches that day. It's like my body was telling me, hey, you have to do this to feel better. So there's an ocean of things down there that we don't know yet, or I don't know anyway, and that's why I do martial arts.
I think there's another bit where it comes to the to the Chinese connections. Sascha and I share a history with a really brilliant master of traditional Chinese martial arts, Martin Nienhaus, with whom we made an education in kinesiology that was very enlightening, much more than most Kyushu Jitsu seminars I have seen in my lifetime. The kinesiology education with Martin was brilliant. And Martin opened a bunch of things for me that have to do with kata, form, technique, and martial arts altogether, not only being for fighting, but also influencing the energy system, the Qi of your body. Now, not everybody believes in that, and I know in modern times people are fast to get angry when you suggest something that they think is scientifically unproven. Yeah, but one of the things that was very exciting was that Martin often had a look at karate techniques and kata and what they do on the energetic level. Now this is more Sascha's field than mine, so I'm a bit of an amateur here. But every movement, every muscle we have, the whole structure of our bone and muscle system is connected to the energy system, following this idea, yeah, this philosophy, to the energy system just as much as our organs are. Yeah. So a movement of a certain muscle in a certain way will influence our energy system and our overall health. Not only by means of medical things like better cardio or relaxing a muscle or something, but also on an energetic level that would fit to your kata experience. Maybe the kata you did there had the movements that you needed to fix or support your energy system. Yeah. Now, not everybody has to believe this.
No.
For those who don't believe in the energy system and so on, I always say, see it as a placebo. For me, it works brilliant.
More and more of this network in the body is researched nowadays, and it is like a massive network of body parts and things that just belong together, and then also emotional signatures we have that belong to a certain body part and belong to a certain organ. This is all traditional Chinese medicine, but is kind of coming up into scientific research at the moment, and it's still some people kind of back away from it, but you can also explain it with just a very, very subtle body awareness that brings you so much. If you reduce the amount of tension you have, or micro tensions in your body, micro tensions around your organs, stuff that we are normally not aware of, then this has a massive boosting effect on your health. And this is something you get with slow kata, dentan kata, for example, like George described. And then what we use in the Secret Elements Qi Gong system I did with Martin is that you intuitively know, your body, your whole system intuitively knows what it needs. So if you have this kind of epiphany, I should do Gangkak with this specific way of doing it, then this is something that came up from inside of you because your body knows it before you are aware of it.
And the body knows the tool because you've trained it again and again and again. So there is this is a big and important element in martial arts, intuition, and that we train our body and our mind to work in a harmonious and intertwined way. Is this the right? I'm not sure, but that body and mind connect again, and we get a good chance to influence both with each other. These are things that I found first in Chinese martial arts. There was not a lot of this stuff to be found in Japanese martial arts. The Bujinkan ninjutsu has a bit more. Aikido has some of these things, but that also depends, of course, of your teacher and the source where you find it from. But the Chinese seem to always have put a lot of emphasis on this part.
I think
that issue with the Cultural Revolution when this traditional knowledge was rolled out of the country. So sometimes you have to search for this knowledge outside of China, but still, the traditional arts are more connected to these, which I find very interesting.
Quite often in China, you have a lot of ideas. The teachers are also people who wonder, and people who want to become masters of something wonder. And it doesn't matter what you do, if you do theater, if you do singing, martial arts, or becoming a doctor. And so even when the revolution tried to do away with things like this, it was very much also in the population in one way or the other, and then later it came back again from Taiwan or someone else. What I found interesting there was when I talked with Chinese doctors who had their first experiences with Western patients, and then people come in and they ask them, okay, how does your liver feel, or how do your kidneys feel? And the people were saying, how the hell should I know this? I never felt my liver or my kidney, because for a Chinese person, especially somebody who did meditation and Tai Chi, Qi Gong, and so, you know this. I know how my liver feels and what it is doing at the moment, or my kidney, because of my training, because of my meditation, because of the Qi Gong I did. And of course, for me, it feels absolutely normal and to know this. But I know there was a very long time in my life where I didn't know this, so it was something to learn. And for me also, this is why I believe in something like Qi, because from the experience that I have, if people said I can't measure it, then it's okay for them. I don't discuss it with them. If they don't want to have it, if they don't want to measure it, it's nice for them. If I try to teach people and teach people want to try this and it works, it's also good. I mean, my life doesn't depend on them believing. It depends on that it works for me. It works for Georgia when with his problems, which is also great. Congratulations to this. So I think what we here talking is what we already had is body awareness, that we learn more about what our body is telling us when we do our training, like when we do sparring or push hands or kakiwaza, that we also learn what our senses are telling us, what we are seeing, what we are feeling, becomes more nuanced. We get a better idea what happens. And I think this is also when we get into a conflict situation where a fight could happen. We go there, we look around. Yes, we have the knowledge. We say, okay, we possibly could do this and this. But we also have the knowledge that we know, even if we have a complete beginner who is very aggressive in front of us, we can be very, very much hurt because we don't know what this idiot will do. But when we get into a situation, we see more things. We see how people behave. We get a feeling for what they feel, and we can react to this without it actually getting violent. We can keep it away because we have a better sensorium for feeling what people might bring to us and somehow redirect it or calm them down better.
At least that's a goal.
Certainly. And I think it works.
It's an issue, yeah. You can see with people that you train with, students that come to you, or with other people that you meet on a seminar, or whatever, you can see whether or not they have approached these topics or not. You see it on the way they move. If somebody is efficient, strong, powerful, competitive, but has never looked into these parts of martial arts, the internal parts of martial arts, never cared for the connections within his or her own body, you will see that the martial arts they do stays unconnected. They might win a fight, but it's always an external exercise of power.
Exactly.
And if you work with people like this, you notice that they lack the empathy and the feeling for that you just described when coming into a room, feeling the atmosphere or something is not happening with these people.
For me,
I'm sorry.
I just want to say, in a deeper step for me, it's also first is getting this body awareness of internal martial arts, and then you inevitably come to the emotional level, because we are so emotionally driven animals in the end. And in martial arts, and then if you take the step to fighting, of course, we're absolutely governed by emotions. And that's like Klaus said, if you have all the skills, but then you are in a stressful situations, a fight, or just another stressful situation with your boss or your partner, and then you're completely governed by your emotions because you never looked into this depth, then it's kind of all your training is useless. And this is also, that's what you can see, I think, because every emotional pattern we have directly translates into our body, into our stance, into the way we stand. And someone who has this narrow-minded, aggressive mindset is not able to stand in a certain way, even if you need a bit of understanding to see that. But if you're not completely able to completely relax into your stance, to give yourself to the ground, then you will always see this in the emotional pattern people have.
Funny enough, that's not a constant. I can notice that on myself, that it depends on the day and how I feel in a certain circumstance.
Yeah.
A martial arts, I go to a training and I get a negative vibe, and I also can't function the way that I usually do.
It doesn't flow.
So there is exactly, the flow is missing. The dojo as a place where we actually care for do, for the idea of our way of life, and not just for sports, has to have a certain atmosphere for me. If I don't feel good, I can't get into the proper flow. And I had that a lot. I trained in a lot of hostile, and I didn't get there. Yeah.
I know you don't want me to recommend you books, but but if you have the chance, I recommend a Danish writer, a musician, scientist, Peter Bastian. He has this book called Master Teachings, How to Become a Master. It's about mastery, regardless of if it is whatever it is. And he said that who will develop you is when you work to better the level, your worst level. So at your worst, you have to be good enough. So that's the difference between masters and not masters. They're good enough at their worst. So you have to those trainings where you're not feeling the flow, where you're not feeling the vibe, and you do it anyway. Those are the ones that are pushing your boundaries in your development forward. I find this guy very interesting, inspiring.
And I mean, it's not the goal to be like emotionally stable after 1 year of training. I think that's the art. That's the thing we're striving for 80 years in martial arts. And you have throwbacks, and you think you haven't learned anything, and I think that belongs to the process.
Yeah. Well, what are your personal experiences? Because I have had some experiences, the self-defense ones, and also once I had an anaphylactic shock and I was choking to death. And every time I'm in those life and death situations, it's like my mind splits. One side of my mind does everything calculated, tactically flawless. One side of my mind completely panics. So when I was choking to death, I was going, "Wow!" And the other side of my mind was, "Oh, this is like it feels. This is what it feels to die. It's not so bad." Okay. Oh, that was an interesting, and that kind of experience I have also in confrontations where one side of me is up here and the other side is taking tactical decisions, ensuring that I win this or dominate the situation. And it's a very, very, very strange feeling. I don't know why.
Funnily enough,
similar experiences.
Funnily enough, in ninjutsu, there is a meditation technique that's called Kuji-Kiwi, where you work on doing exact this kind of division, where you, on the one hand, have yourself doing the meditation, and then yourself observing yourself while doing the meditation and controlling what you do. So you actually manage to divide yourself into two instances, and this is very much what you described there. And
can you write to me the name of the exercise so I can find some information about it?
Yes, it's Kuji, Ku.
Better type it down and send it as an email. That will not lead.
I sent an email. Okay, it's okay.
You put it in the show notes.
And if anyone is interested, when you write it as an email, we type it in the comments on the YouTube as well. So
I sent you an email. You put it in the comments so everybody has it.
Yeah, or just type it in there yourself. I mean, on the. But I'm not totally sure. What you described there, George, is a detachment.
I don't know.
And that's not necessarily victims of serious crimes describe these kind of things, that they were able to detach the emotional part of their being to survive the assault. I think what we should probably strive for is rather a calm mind. This was what in karate we call sanshin. Yeah? The ability to, in stress situations, to calm down and empty our mind so we can react. It might be that what you describe is exactly this. That in all the panic you find a quiet, safe room. Yeah, where you have sanshin and where you can act. That doesn't always work for me, I can tell you this. I had a lot of situations, a lot is probably exaggerated. I'm not living in that street where everybody kills each other. So, but I had situations when I noticed that I took a long while to get out of astonishment, surprise, and this can't be happening until I finally was able to empty my mind and act. So I had a lot of situations in which this took me a long time. So I'm not totally sure. It's possible that what you described there is this sanshin experience, that you find a safe, a calm place from where you can act. I'm not sure if I would suggest it to search for this, because that is a detachment. Detaching from your emotions is risky.
In some also in some meditation traditions, I know that this is kind of a, maybe not the end goal, but some kind of in-between goal, that you observe what is happening and that you don't strive to kill your emotions right away. It's the old question: if you're enlightened and you get eaten by a shark, are you allowed to scream?
Yeah, fantastic.
Because maybe in Taoism they would say,
but if you're enlightened, is there even a question of what is allowed and what isn't?
Another good question. Yes, in Taoism they would say, bring out your natural, like the thing that naturally happens. It's the Tao, but don't don't be dragged by the river of your emotions, because then you're just like a slave to it.
But I think you are misunderstanding what I mean, because I never was a passive agent. I've been in confrontations, for example, with people in a car, where one side of my head went into the conflict, once the other one took tactical decisions, for example. So I was outside his door before he could get out. So I told him, "You're going to die now, and you're going to die while you're going out of your car. And you're gonna, my friend, I'm going to fight you when I want to fight you." So I instilled fear in them from my tactical superiority, while my head was going crazy. So I always find this: one side is taking action, tactical action, to ensure victory, and the other side is going crazy. The other side is going with the emotions, the fear, the adrenaline, and so on. And that has always given me make me confident, actually, because I know there is one side of me that goes, and up to now it's been always there. So that's why I say when I'm in confrontations, it's not an enjoyable. I'm not in confrontations anymore. Come on, I'm 52 years old. But the times when I was in confrontations, I always had this. And in meditation, one meditation I usually do is observe the observer. It's like when and that is the only one place that resembles that kind of feeling. When, in meditation we say the eye cannot be conscious of itself because it cannot see itself. So you're trying to be conscious of the one looking out. So you're kind of split into two, like Klaus described. But that is the only time I encounter these kind of things, and I think maybe something is that could be improved on, or maybe it's something I should eradicate. I don't know, but that's what it is.
I'm not sure if the matter is if you eradicate it or if you. It seems you have an eye of the storm there. It's nice.
No, it's not nice. It's only I thought maybe you guys had the same pattern of work. I don't know. You have so many experiences that I don't have. So
I can say it myself. It's either flow or not.
Sascha, I didn't get what you said.
Sorry, no, I want to say, I think I know that feeling when you still, some part of your consciousness is going through this emotional turmoil, and there's this other part which is very rational and can react and act, and I think that's a good state. And coming back to the topic we had before, I love to have that in other situations, because sometimes it seems much more challenging to have this ability in a normal day-to-day life situation than in a fight.
Yeah.
And that's what is like Qi Gong and martial arts art aiming for me. To translate it into the stressful situations you have with your spouse, with your boss, with your tax declaration, with all that stuff that makes you ill in the end.
Yeah, that is exactly.
There is an unfair bit to it. The stress that we have in our everyday life is often often so low key that it's not always easy to see it. I think most of us run around with a high level of well, not us, of course, we are far beyond that, but and none of our watches now would have that issue. But a lot of people struggle with a constant level of tension. that is perhaps not 100% or 150 like it would be in a conflict situation, an escalated one, but it's constantly there. And we had this. I had a seminar with a bunch of doctors who worked with cancer patients, and we talked about fear and what it does to the body. And a lot of the things we have in our everyday life as civilization sicknesses now, cardio issues, heart rhythm issues, blood pressure issues, or digestive issues, whatever, irritable bowel syndrome. All these are things that when you are under massive stress are exactly the symptoms you have. Yeah. Or asthma. Civilization sicknesses seem to be often connected to stress. And we have a constant 60-70% stress level in our everyday life.
Yeah.
And but what I wanted to say, those doctors, they were back then, yeah, that's a real issue. Adrenaline is an acid. And if you have this in your body, you are actually acidic. In German, we say somebody is acidic, sauer, and he's angry.
Yeah.
It's a term. That is sauer. He's acidic means he's completely angry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we have a situation in which we don't always maybe we don't always notice it because it's so normal to be under stress, under tension, driving to work in the morning, being in a traffic jam, rushing to a shop, having constant time pressure, having someone calling us. Now the invention of smartphones, constantly messages coming in. Everybody expects us to reply right away. So this level of stress is deadly, but it's not like a combat situation or a conflict situation where you feel it.
So what do we do in the dojo then?
We are getting rid of adrenaline. We are actually working on our mental health because we are getting rid of the acid going through our bloodstream by means of moving. Yeah, moving our body in an intelligent way.
Well, that is not exclusive to the dojo.
No, it's not. This would be for any sports. That's true.
Yeah. So what do we do?
The conscious way is the important part. The conscious way is one important bit, and that's not exclusive to, well, in many sports you don't have that, like you have it in Tai Chi, for example. Because, I mean, I like running and swimming and whatever, but it's not in such a conscious and detailed way. You don't learn to get rid of your, the micro tensions in your body and how they are connected to your emotions and that stuff. That's a big advantage in if you do martial arts in an intelligent way.
Exactly. That was my point, that we have to be mindful as teachers, as sensei. We have to be mindful what kind of training we make our students follow, because we have to. So we have to be careful not to feed the monster. I mean, we have to give them ways of training, of cultivating themselves, where they can be mindful, be this deep pressure is going deflating their own inner pressure. And I think, in my own experience, that's the most difficult part. Maybe also the most important. I don't know.
It's also the most enjoyable part. Getting rid of tension, aggression, stress is something that I think it is to a degree, in marketing terms, a unique selling point of martial arts. We're having something where we are actually focusing on these issues, and we are giving techniques, we are giving movement patterns, we are giving movement principles that actually help to loosen up in stressful situations. And that's what Sascha said. I think that's absolutely true. The most exciting part about martial arts is what you can take in your everyday life. Starts with the way you are sitting, you are standing, you are moving, and the methods you use for breathing under stress, how you cope with bad news, how you cope with other people. I can say I've lived in a lot of stressful situations where without the martial arts, I would probably had much worse outcomes, let's say it like this. And I don't talk about fights on the street, but just surviving in my everyday life.
I think what's also very stressy for many people is that the more things that they have, like with work, like with taxes and so on, they're long-term things that always nagging in the behind of the head, in the back of the head. And when we do martial arts and when we go and do push-hands or do sparring or something like this, or even competition, we get into a situation and we know the situation will be so and so many minutes or even less. And then when the situation is over, then it's over. It's the same when you when people watch TV and they have a TV series where you have one story per week, like Doctor Who or something like this, where after 40 minutes there was a conflict, there was a stress situation, the situation is finished.
Yeah.
Normally in real life, you have a stress situation a little bit, then you have another stress situation that goes over this stress situation. For example, you are on work, you have a stress situation, you get a call from your family because something happened, then somebody else calls you, then you get an email from a friend. So you have all these small stress situations, and they come add, and then you go home and you sit in front of your TV and you make Firefly, Doctor Who, what takes your fun, and you have one small problem, and then you have a dramatic situation, you have a dramatic solution, and after that, situation solved. Which actually, it happens in the dojo, it happens in the wing, but it happens on TV, or in a book. But normally it doesn't happen to many of us in real life. So I think this is also helpful.
I agree. But Klaus, you have to start watching newer TV shows.
Why?
Absolutely.
Why?
Firefly is awesome.
To pop up from Klaus. Here's one more. Oh, this is just came in. I don't know Professor Robert Clark, but apparently hard reading courses back in the 80s. I mean, I was 7 then. So,
right?
So maybe I'm excused for not knowing him. That's indeed true. We have a lot of things that are part of the martial arts that now pop up as sudden trends in self-development or
this awareness. These awareness things.
Yeah, like the trend with the mindfulness that now here in English schools, mindfulness is suddenly a topic. That's meditation practice, like from the olden days. It just has a new name. Yeah. Probably
I have a lot of books with Dr. Robert Clark. I will recommend to you, Heero, but I won't.
to clear that up, George and I talked about it. How many books we actually are able to read. I have a huge pile of books, and very often I find myself not reading as much as I used to. Partly because I'm hell busy with all our missing link and family and so on. And partly because I am getting, and this is probably a danger, more and more used to get information in small bits and bobs, to collect knowledge or information from Wikipedia entries and small YouTube. The YouTube clips already take too long for my patient line. Yeah, I want to read something. I want to have a fast information, and I very often struggle to read big books unless it's a novel. So actually a bit sad. But this is what George refers to. That you can don't give me 500 book suggestions in a day. Yeah, I'm not going to read all of them.
the internet shortens our attention span. That's
yeah, it is an issue, and probably deciding to sit down with a book and detach from everything else for a little while is just as good as meditation. Of course, then you have to read different from Klaus, because Klaus needs roughly 10 minutes for a 500-page book.
10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes. Yeah, he has read through my novel, through one of my novels that really had 700 pages.
Wow.
It must have been a day or 1.5.
1.5.
Yeah.
It was because it was a really good novel.
It was a good novel. All right. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read it twice.
Yeah, but it took me like 2 weeks each time. But I enjoy reading it slow, to be honest. I would love to have the speed reading ability.
I read like I eat.
okay.
I eat very slowly, so maybe that's it.
We have one issue here. We have been talking 1.5 hours, and while the first 15 minutes might have been a bit slow, I think we had a brilliant time after that. I'm not sure if we covered the question of division between Chinese and Japanese martial arts. Probably not at all.
I think it's a little bit difficult for us because we are 4 people who bring this together. So inside us, there is not so much division here.
Exactly.
There were times when I felt that division, as I said in the very beginning, when I was still trying to define what I'm doing by the differences from other things. So when I did Shotokan, and when somebody asked me, what is your style? I would tell, yeah, it's different from that style and different from that and different, and this is specific. And then you force yourself into a narrow box because this is what you do. This is your style. You wouldn't want to break out of that box. But I think none of us is doing this. And surely not in the context of Missing Link now, where we are right now combining very different martial arts styles in one concept.
I mean, it already started out with Shoshin, where we thought with the spirit of the beginner to go everything. So very quickly going around, watching different things and saying, hey, this is interesting. This is interesting too. And this is interesting too. And I want a part of this one too. So this is simply, when you go open to all these things, you see the similarities, and if you see differences, you don't see them as something dividing, but as something that adds to what you're actually doing. Like there's a Jet Li movie where they talk about this first formation of the Kung Fu Association in China, and where they talk in the beginning of the different schools, and when they says, no, when we meet, we don't need to fight each other and show my school is better than your school, but to learn about what the others are doing or what it brings to us, which I think for me is nowadays the most important thing, meeting people like you and other people, even from the European martial arts or somewhere else, and to see what it brings. But
this is also, I shouldn't say but. This is an interesting challenge as well. I spent roughly 10 years doing the Shoshin project work, and it was nice. It was absolutely brilliant and very inspiring. And before that, with the work for the police and so on, I had constant crossover. And but I now, in hindsight, since Sascha and Connie dragged me into this missing link concept, I notice that it was an issue that I had a bunch of building blocks. And I always learned something new, and I found a new building block, and I found it interesting, but I sometimes didn't bother building a house. And this is something I enjoy about Missing Link right now, that all the different influences we get from different directions end up being built into a house, and not just a lot of building blocks. That's also an important.
I remember that it always stressed me out when I found something that really fascinated me and that worked and whatever. And then I was always thinking, how the hell should I marry that with my Shotokan? Yeah. And that is gone now. And it feels very
gone.
I don't remember if I ever told you, when one of my times when I was in China, I was training with this cage fighter who did like illegal cage fighting stuff in Thailand to earn money while traveling, and he's really
that's hardcore.
And I was telling him it was in the phase. Yeah, it was in the phase when we were still thinking about Missing Link, and I was telling him like what our plans are, and he was like, "No, it's impossible. You can't go to Chinese martial arts. It's useless. Shotokan, you will never be able to merge it with Chinese martial arts." And it had kind of an impact on me, and then when you saw this division, and it's also kind of contagious. If people always tell you there's this division, it's easy to believe. But luckily, we worked through it, and now, like you said, it's a house, and everything has a place in it, and it feels much better because it creates stress for me if things don't belong together.
And it still has, and this was always my biggest issue, it still has room for new furniture. And if I don't like one of the wings of that house, I can tear it down and build a new one, and it's lovely.
And new rooms.
The difference is, is for me, the division is not between Japanese and Chinese or whatever. For me, the division is whether we four and the people we train with, if we believe we are owners of the truth, or if we are searching for it. Because what I meet all the time is people that believe they are owners of the truth. Their way is their only real way. And then they close for everything else. But I believe none of the four of us believe we own the truth. We go and say, that guy moves very well. How does he do that? I want to be able to do that. I mean, we go out and see, we see quality. Instead of going, no, bad. It doesn't conform with my set of rules of what is good. We go say, good. Give it to me. Thank you. Good. It's a much nicer word to be in, I think.
And actually, I think this is how martial art is something that actually leads to peace. Because when you go around saying these things can never go together, Shotokan and Chinese martial arts can never go together, even so one more or less developed from the other one. Then this is like people from this country and people from this country, they can never come together because historically this and this and this and this happened. And as long as you have this kind of mindset that it doesn't work together, you will never actually try to make peace because you don't believe it can happen. And
because you're busy distinguishing yourself from others.
Pardon?
Because you're busy distinguishing yourself from others rather than connecting to them. That's exactly the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and your mind can't do this at the same time. Separation and bringing things together.
Exactly.
There is another element to what George just said. Owning the truth. I am not sure if I had a phase, probably rather in the beginning of my martial arts career, where I had the feeling, I know. When I was 18 and I finished school, I had the truth. I knew everything, exactly how the world works. And I was very convinced about it, but I have lost that conviction entirely. But what I have kept for a while, and that was a bit odd, I expected deep in my mind that there is somewhere on this planet is a place where a wise old man, or maybe a wise old woman, sits and she or he knows everything. So someone is out there who understands the world and knows exactly how it works. Everything makes sense to someone. So this belief that there is someone who has wisdom and the knowledge and who understands everything was part of my search. I was searching for a master or someone who can give me, open up for me all the knowledge they already have. So I wouldn't have to do it myself. And I think this is also part of martial arts, to discover that at the end of the day, you have to do it yourself. You have to find your own way. And even if you have the greatest masters, and even if you have the most inspiring people around you, you still have to do it yourself.
Have you read the article, What is Wrong with You? That Ian Abernethy wrote?
No?
He wrote an article based on something Funakoshi Sensei wrote that basically says, what is wrong with you? Because and the premise is that people never aim high or higher than their sensei, because sensei is already all-knowing. So how can I be like him or better than him? And Ian Abernethy's article is about, hey, what is wrong with you? He's a human, he's a man, he's a woman. Just train like he trained and go beyond. So unless something is wrong with you, there's nothing stopping you from being better than your sensei.
And this is also something, as a teacher, that in my opinion you should thrive for.
Yeah.
You should try to give your students everything they need, not everything that you can do, and keep them in a box. And this is a division problem that I also see when people describe their style and say it's this and it's nothing else. Because it means that there is a limit to your development. There's a limit to how far you can go. It's defined, big issue in styles that still have a lineage. Yeah? A lot of the Chinese styles where a master has given stuff to a disciple and it was passed down, it might be authentic, but very often it's very limited, because what that master, that first master, couldn't do or didn't think of doesn't happen. That's a pity. Yeah? So this division is also limiting your own personal development.
And you can see this kind of division also when it comes from one master. For example, Cheo Khan here in Germany, when he came from wherever he actually came from, there's a lot of stories there. He taught certain people for a certain time in a certain style. And then he taught other people because he learned something new or he had some new ideas in a different style. And then you had a lot of different students who said, we do the right thing, no, we do the right thing, we do it. And they all made, in a way, their own school and their own ideas. And always saying, we did the right thing because teacher taught us first. And the other said, no, we do the right thing because teachers taught us later. And then he had developed better, and so on and so on. I had some fun way that I had two teachers from one tradition and one he had at another time, and learned two completely different systems from this, and they're sometimes contradictory too. And when I see these discussions, this is authentic Yang style, no, this is authentic Yang style, no, this comes from this family and this comes from this part of the family, and so on and so on. And these kind of discussions, I find them so funny, because it means people believe that the teachers who taught before have never really learned, that they didn't add things from their experiences, from going around, from seeing things. I mean, when you read martial arts novels, the Chinese have a very big tradition of these fuxia novels. And these fuxia novels, these martial art fighters, all masters, of course, they always meet each other, and they have very, very big and epic fights. And in these fights, then they learn about the other one and they integrate this into their system, and then it goes on again. And I think very much of martial art learning has always been like this. You do things in a certain way, and then you go on. If you always stay in one place, if you always stay in your school and only have your own students, then of course you don't have to develop, because there's no new input. But that is, for example, something that never would interest me.
A lot of people seem to like this being there and done. I had a young lady coming here to our dojo here, training with us a couple of times. She was there 3 or 4 times. black belt already and a competitive fighter and apparently quite successful. And after one of the lessons, she said, "Well, this is really interesting. In every lesson, I have the feeling I learn more than I have learned before. You open completely new ideas about karate. I don't like that. I'm not coming anymore."
Yes, I remember.
But she knew what she wanted.
You might have met her because I think she was still there when you were in 2012 in the seminar. It doesn't matter. That was really, really, really an eye opener for me. This I did so much effort because I liked her and she was very talented and very fit, and I pulled all options and I did my best to and then I don't like that. I think we have to.
We had a lot of similar experiences in our school when, especially from Shotokan karate from different parts of Germany, people were moving to our city and then they were looking for a dojo and they found ours, and for whatever reason it looked most appealing to them. Then they came, trained for a while, and they always said, "Wow, I never had this. We never did Bonkai, and it's super interesting." And then we had some. Then they went to a normal Shotokan dojo again, which is okay. But I found it also very interesting. It's kind of okay. Maybe it's nicer to do the stuff that you already know and where you're really good at.
Especially if you have a busy life. And you are already busy, and you don't want to go in the dojo in the evening and be challenged again.
I think it's more difficult. My dojo is 20 years this year, and my
oh really 20?
Yeah, and my first black belts. They are telling me today, "I'm so glad I got my black belt back then. I will never make it today." Because we have developed so much over the years. They say, "I will never make it today. I will never make it today." So many of these guys say they had the same discussion that Klaus was telling that Sensei taught this when I was for 15 years ago. Yeah, but Sensei is learning and meeting other martial artists and evolving. So what was I said 15 years ago, it's not longer my truth. So it's not what I'm saying today. And that's the way it goes, man.
Yeah, it is. But there we go again with the challenge of a teacher to break down the content for people who are not living their life only for martial arts. I guess these are two kinds of students, those that will completely go up in it, and those that are saying, "Hey, for me, that's a hobby, something I do by the way," and offering something sense-making for them is also important. Which brings me back to what I tried to say 15 minutes ago. We have now nearly 2 hours of talk. Everybody who isn't a complete nutcase will have phased out long before. I wonder how many watchers are left.
And my wife is going to kill me.
Actually.
I was already told, okay, we are eating now. We're not waiting any longer for you. So I found this very enjoyable, and I think we will repeat it in June in Aarhus at the summer camp.
Hey,
Klaus.
Can't wait.
What about you? Are you joining us?
Or B square.
Sorry.
No, we just kind of invited you to the summer camp.
Exactly.
Oh, thank you.
When? Try to threaten you.
When will it be?
June 22nd and 23rd.
Right, June the 22nd and 23rd.
Yes, that's it. In Aarhus, in Denmark. It will be awesome.
June or in August?
June.
Oh.
No.
June,
not August.
And Sascha and George and I, we will all be there.
That would be a lot of fun.
You can't be the missing link, Klaus. You have to be
You cannot be the missing link.
On the other hand, there needs to be a missing link. Otherwise, we need a new name.
Well,
I will see what I can do, because this is also the period when in my school, in the school where I teach English and German, we are starting to making the end of the school year with all the testing and all the conferences and all the rest marking and so on and so on.
So this is a real challenge for you. It's great that you still come. Regarding the missing link, this is a question my daughter brought up.
Aye.
She said, what are you doing when the link is found?
Ah,
Will you rename to found link?
awesome question, Faye. Really awesome question.
Really
only
brilliant.
a child can ask that. He's
She should be our chief philosopher.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Good. Thank you, guys. I will join my daughter on the food, on the dinner table.
What a pleasure.
This was awesome.
Thank you, guys.
This was awesome. Let's do it again.
Yes.
We have the next appointment for the next Karate Talk, but I don't know when it is. I should have found it out before. But yeah, watch this spot.
Enjoy your dinner and your night meditation, the 3 hours.
3 hours of night meditation. Oh, this reminds me of Sascha and I have a common friend.
One more time.
Karate friend. Yeah, I'm restarting the conversation. Who tried to eliminate sleep altogether.
Cool.
I love to sleep.
No, I cannot tell names now. I tell you
Okay.
after. But who told me that he does Qi Gong and Tai Chi, and he tries to not sleep anymore because it's a waste of time.
He will need medical attention.
I am pretty sure at some point he might, but isn't that a nice ending point? 3 hours of meditation. I will eliminate sleep. I will just meditate through the night.
No, thank you.
Snoring.
Not for me.
Have a lovely evening, guys. See you soon.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.